It was supposed to be a quiet, early morning hike. I wanted a break from the noise of city life, a bit of peace, and maybe a beautiful view at the top of Ashridge Peak. The trail was nearly empty as I started my climb, the air fresh and crisp in the early light. The forest around me was dense, tall pines and oaks rising up like silent guardians. There was something comforting about the solitude at first. After an hour of hiking, I noticed something odd, a faint smell like rot or mildew drifting through the trees. I brushed it off as swamp gas or maybe a dead animal nearby. But as I continued, the smell grew stronger, and so did a strange feeling like someone was watching me. I'd catch glimpses of movement in the corner of my eye, shadows flickering between the trees, only to vanish the moment I looked. Then I heard it, a faint whisper, a voice carried by the wind. It was too quiet to make out any words, but it sounded close, just behind me. I stopped, listening, my pulse quickening. There was no one there, just silence and that sickly, rotting smell. The trail grew steeper, winding through a rocky area where trees were sparse. That's when I saw it, a small, makeshift cairn, a stack of stones that looked freshly made. At the top of the pile was a broken doll's head, half buried in the dirt. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Who would leave something like that out here? Ignoring the gnawing feeling in my gut, I kept moving, but the whispers returned, louder now. It felt like someone was right behind me, close enough to touch. I spun around, but no one was there. The forest was utterly still, but the shadows around me seemed darker, like they were closing in. I checked my phone, realizing with dread that I'd lost all signal. I was alone out here, cut off from the rest of the world. A cold wind whipped through the trees, carrying that horrible stench and making the forest feel hostile. I could have turned back, but something kept me going. A strange pull, like the mountain itself was beckoning me higher. Eventually, the trail narrowed, barely a footpath winding between dense, twisted trees that cast long, skeletal shadows. My skin prickled as I noticed more of those odd little cairns along the way. Some were larger, others scattered with strange objects. An old shoe, a broken watch, a stuffed animal ripped apart. It was as if someone had left offerings or warnings. Then I heard the whisper again, clear as day, and this time it said my name. My blood ran cold. I turned slowly, heart pounding, and there, just off the path, stood a figure, a tall, gaunt shape shrouded in shadow. Its face was obscured, but I could feel its gaze, an intense, hollow stare that felt like it was looking straight through me. My legs went weak, rooted in place by some force beyond my control. It stepped closer, and the stench of decay became overwhelming, filling my nose and mouth, making my stomach churn. Its hand reached out, bony and pale, and as it moved closer, I saw its face. Or rather, the lack of one. Where eyes, a nose, a mouth should have been, there was only darkness, a void that seemed to pull everything toward it. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. In a voice that was both a whisper and a scream, it said, "Stay." I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my feet, but I managed to turn and run. I didn't look back. The whispers followed, louder, angrier, as I tore through the trees. The forest seemed to close in on me, branches clawing at my arms, roots reaching up to trip me. The trail twisted and turned, but somehow I made it back to the first cairn, the one with the doll's head. Only now, there were more of them, dozens lining the trail, each one topped with strange, broken objects. And that awful, rotting smell was everywhere. I ran harder, lungs burning, until finally I broke free of the trees and saw my car in the distance. I sprinted to it, barely able to breathe, and jumped inside, locking the doors. As I pulled away, I looked back, and for just a moment, I saw that figure standing at the edge of the trees, watching me. Its faceless head tilted, as if in disappointment, before it faded into the shadows. I drove home, shaking, barely able to process what had happened. But even now, in the dead of night, I can still hear it. A whisper, soft and insistent, calling my name, waiting for me to return to the mountain.